Hello and welcome to Dorks on Sports, a podcast about four dorks talking about sports. My name is Daniel. Joining me as always is Curtis. How was your holidays, Curtis?
I survived.
Yeah. I mean, you got
survived
like
it.
Your kid is kind of like in prime holiday spirit now, right?
Oh, he and his mom. Yeah.
Yeah.
Heather is a complete secularist, Christmas non-theistic sort of commercialistic. Like she just loves the shit. Like she loves the holiday. It's her time of the year, and as expected, with a 4-year-old with a mother like that, like he's just in the throes of it too. And I mean, I've spent many years as an adult sort of like not being so into the holiday because of various sort of things and stuff like that, but being a father later in life, and having a 4-year-old and having him experience the joy of just running around the room in excitement that this fat little elf came down the chimney and dropped off shit for him. It's super exciting and fun and engaging, and I love it for that. I love the happiness that it brings people on
that was me when the Seahawks went to the Super Bowl.
What's that?
That was me when the Seahawks went to the Super Bowl.
Yes, that was
yeah. Allanah, nice to see you back.
Thank you.
You had a wonderful vacation. Travel.
Well, so we were gonna fly to Disneyland last Tuesday, or fly to LA, and then the flight got canceled like on Monday night. And rather than stress myself out, we decided I still didn't do the podcast because I had family here, and it would have been chaotic. And then we rescheduled it from Tuesday to Wednesday night, and then on Wednesday, about 10 minutes before we left for the airport, they canceled that flight.
Good God.
And then they rescheduled us for Friday at 6 a.m. And I was on the phone with the people who you have to talk to reschedule these flights. And I was like, I'm looking at the weather forecast, and Friday morning, this last Friday at 6 a.m., it was supposed to be like 20 degrees and freezing rain. And I was like, do you actually think the planes are going to take off? And it was dead air on the other end. And I was like, okay. So I was like, let's bump that to Friday evening. But then when we went to try and change our hotels to Disneyland, they were going to have to charge us like $800 extra in order to exchange our dates, because we needed to stay in a handicap accessible room, and the only ones they had of those were premium view rooms. And I'm like, why don't you just give it to us for the same price? Because we've already, we're your valued customers, right? We're family because it's Disneyland. And they were like, nope, it will cost this much more. So I checked with my in-law and my father-in-law, and we just canceled it. And then it was like a lot of tears from my kiddo, who's also a very much of a holiday celebrator. Though keeping in mind we do Hanukkah rather than Christmas. And so that celebration is, 8 solid days of celebration and gift giving and everything like that, which is great. But we had planned to, be at Disneyland and in LA, but instead we went to the Great Wolf Lodge, which was fine, but also
it's not Disneyland.
It's not Disneyland.
Yeah.
But yeah, so I was saying to Curtis earlier, I think I gave myself whiplash by falling on the ice, unfortunately. And so it kind of reduced my ability to experience the wonder and majesty that is the Great Wolf Lodge. But I still had a good time, and we had a great meal at the McMenamins in Centralia. And let me tell you, the best goddamn bread pudding I have ever had in my entire life.
Really?
It was unbelievable. And I really wish I had been stoned while I was eating it because it would have just been unbelievable. But yeah, so I'm grateful that the bad part of the holiday is over, and we're gonna move on to New Year's where I have a 12-course meal planned, and I'm very excited for that. But I will end this so we can talk about other more important things.
Like that 12-course meal. Millie, how's it going?
It's going pretty well.
Yeah. How are the holidays?
They were good. We're pretty low key. It's just the hubs and my dad, and we get together on Christmas Eve. I did do a lot of cooking, which I don't normally like. I always want to plan like some big meal, and I'm always slightly regretful. This year, not only did I plan a nice meal, I also was like, I'm going to make that breakfast casserole that I always swear I'm going to make. And so I did, and it's delicious. But that was a lot of work. So then it was time to make the actual like ham dinner Christmas Eve with the family. And I was like, oh my God.
My mother also made breakfast casserole, and it too was delicious.
The first time I remember having a serious Christmas morning breakfast casserole was actually a very good friend of mine, Nicole Vernon. We had a bit of an orphan's Christmas. My dad was out of town and I was living with him at the time. And she, along with some other friends that many of you know, Linda Lombardi, I think it was the two of them that actually spent the night. The three of us spent the night. I think we might have all slept in the same bed. We were basically 15-year-old girls. It was wonderful. And in the morning, Nicole had made this amazing breakfast casserole, which was not something we had done in my family, that she had brought the night before. And so ever since then, I've been like, I gotta do that. So I finally did that, and it felt really good, and it's delicious, and probably the best thing I made, to be honest. But I also did my very first beef short rib. So
what style did you cook it in?
I did it in an Instapot, actually, and it was a red wine.
Oh, nice. So like a French
base. Yeah.
I was curious if French or Korean.
Right. And I've now had 2 offers from family for Korean style. So maybe I'll try that next time. But it came out pretty good. It was my sides that weren't good because I paid all the attention to the mains.
Yeah.
Sorry to make you flip you off.
I've got some good Korean style beef short rib recipes if you're interested. Yeah. And
I will just, because I know you all want to know, I did lose both of my fantasy games this last weekend. Down in the consolation brackets, I continued the slide to the bottom.
The deep descent down.
Yeah. Yep. It's fine.
Yeah. Well, the Seahawks are doing that now too. They've lost now, 5 of their last 6? Is that what we're up to? 6 of the last 7?
Yeah, 5 of the last
5 and 6.
Yeah.
It's not over yet.
Here's the thing. So last week on this podcast, I was saying, the only thing I would be disappointed in this season is if we had a true regression. Like, all I wanted to see was a team get better. And we're playing with house money. If we miss out on the playoffs, for me, that's not a failure of a season. If we end up, 8-9 or 9-8, I think we're going to be okay. That Chiefs game, when you look at the score, looks a lot worse than I think it actually was. And I just kind of wanted to get your opinions. I thought the defense played okay. I thought the offense was very inconsistent. They had a hard time. They could move the ball and then they would just get tied up somewhere. They just couldn't get any points on the board. But they were moving the ball pretty well. The run game was working okay. DK Metcalf was actually had a pretty good game. So when I think of that, I think, this team isn't as bad as I had kind of was imagining it in my head, where this team just got their butts kicked. They went toe to toe with Patrick Mahomes, gave him his worst game of the season. And that should be considered a win. This is a good team, and we were playing them on the road. For this Seattle team, I considered it a good game. Even though
I totally have to agree with you. I think it largely came down to just a slow start, and I think that can really be attributed to playing on I know they had heaters under the field, but playing on an icy surface or in that cold in front of that type of environment where it's loud and the people are really jumping to be there. The fact that they went down 17-3 in the first half was disappointing, and everything looked really disjointed on offense. But then they pitched a shutout in the third quarter and only allowed 10 additional points in the fourth. I mean, it was still a loss. I can't remember what the final score was, but
I think it was 24-13.
24-10, 24-10, and they both
me.
scored 7 in the fourth quarter.
Yeah. But the Chiefs, Kansas City had 295 yards of total offense.
Yeah.
And if you would have told me at the start of the season that our defense, or midway through the season when they were getting gashed by Carolina, by Raiders, by all these other teams, that they would hold the Chiefs to 295 yards total and only 77 rushing yards. I mean, that's a victory. Even if it's a loss, it's a victory. And the fact that we were able to kind of restart the running game, because that Chiefs defense was playing way over their heads. They were, I mean, that defense doesn't play like that most of the season. And then when you kind of couple that with the 49ers game that they lost in a lot the same fashion, where they played them tough, and we all kind of came out of that feeling like it was a victory. I'm not a victory, but it felt good. It felt like a lot better than where we were at the start of the season. We've taken these two teams that are at the top of the class in the NFL. I think it's honestly Buffalo, Kansas City, San Francisco, and maybe Philadelphia. Those are and maybe Cincinnati. Those are your 5 teams that I think have a legitimate chance of walking home with the Super Bowl trophy. And we played both of those teams intensely and well and with meaning in the game. So I'm walking away we could finish 9-8 and make the playoffs, or we could finish 8-9 and not make the playoffs. And I feel like my 8-9 prediction at the start of the year feels really natural to me. And whether or not we make or miss the playoffs, it's good season.
Yeah, agreed. Well, what do you think, Millie?
I think I didn't see a lot of the game.
That's fair.
I set up a recording that didn't record correctly, so I unfortunately entered this game in the third quarter.
Yeah.
So I didn't. There's something about when you do that and you're that far behind, so things just don't feel good. Yeah. So I had all this stuff from going shopping at the grocery store, so I was very distracted. So I'll be honest with you, I did not really watch this game very closely. So as far as this game goes, because of what you all said, I've gone and I've looked at the stats, and the visual is such a great storyteller, and it's pretty straight down the middle. The score should have been closer. And in no way am I disparaging Geno, but that one interception in the end zone is the difference between that score looking closer, right? Yeah. But that's just one play.
And those 3 4th downs, they didn't convert.
They took points off the board by going for it on 4th down too.
Right. Yeah. But they were also, they were 3 for 6 on 4th down, which is, shows you how many times they tried it. On the one hand, you're happy to see that a 50% success rate. On the other hand, that was a lot of going for it on 4th down. I agree. So I don't really know what to make of that game. it was my upset special. I was really hoping to see some fireworks. And one of the things that we talk about a lot is how fun it is to watch the Seahawks win or lose. They're competitive, yada, yada. And again, didn't come into it with the right energy, but I just didn't feel that. It felt hard and desperate. It didn't feel fun. And, crushing penalties. It wasn't a fun game. So what I really want is the next two games to just be really fun. And I think they could be. And, we're not going to talk too much more about the Seahawks this episode of the pod. So I just want to say, I hope that they do really well in these last two games. I'm excited to see it. All the same shit I said last week. Go Hawks.
Go Hawks. I also think that, losing Tyler Lockett for that game, I think against that team and against that defense hurt them. I think they could have converted a few more third downs if they had our little pocket Lockett running those slot routes.
Oh, hey, quick sidebar though. So I finally, for Christmas, the Hubs, he gave me my Lockett jersey that I've said I want a Lockett jersey for years and years.
Nice.
It's like 3 sizes too big.
Oh no.
It just means when you go to the games, you can put it on over a parka.
It's my own fault because I'm like, no, you gotta get bigger than that. You gotta get bigger than that. And he was just like, all right.
Yeah, they kind of run large.
They do. And we did measurements, but like it does not match up at all to the measurements. It's fine. I just I don't have my Lockett jersey
like
yet, but it's coming. It's coming.
What do you think, Curtis? How'd you feel about the game?
I had a hard time
what you
tracking
were
the
able to
game
see.
because I was in a chaotic post ice storm situation down in Portland where my wife decided she needed to do a bunch of last minute Christmas shopping. So between listening to it in the car and sitting and watching it on my phone in a parking lot in various parking lots, I mean, to me, it just wasn't very impressive from what I think defensively it was, but the offense over the last few games, I feel has been on kind of a regression more, like I think Gino's sort of leveled out a lot of his play from where he was in the first half of the season. And the interior of the offensive line feels really beat up, and
that's where I see a lot of it.
I think there's deficiencies at center and guard, and I feel like that's where the pass rush really affects Gino.
Yeah.
And without the balance of the run game, and without the balance, and without the extra security blanket of Tyler Lockett, I mean, it just puts sort of more pressure. I feel like they almost have to go to more Ken Walker to sort of hide the deficiencies of how they can get exposed in the passing game, because I think that Austin Blythe is sort of playing like a hippopotamus on roller skates right now in pass protection, and it's just not fun. I mean, I think they should minimize the amount of volume passes that they do. And so I think that like the last 6 games has been sort of more telling about like, what the team needs to do next off season, more than, what they can do. I think they can. I think they're fully capable of going out and winning the next 2 games, and with a little bit of luck, with my understanding is if they win the next 2, and if Washington drops one of their next 2 games, we're in the playoffs, and
that's completely. I mean, that
feels plausible.
Those are odds. Those are good odds. Yeah, those are good odds.
I just, what I would like to say is just sort of regurgitation of what I said last week. I mean, my hope is that they just finish it out strong. That this time last year, we lost a disappointing game, a really super disappointing game to the Bears that came in and sort of beat us with their backup quarterback, I think it was, right? Something. Was it Foles? I think it was Foles. And it was a pretty pathetic and it was a very lackluster game. And then in the following week, everyone was nervous about how we would play the Lions because they were looking like they were a little bit more upstart, and they came into town and we rolled on them.
Yeah, that was a fun game
with a whole lot of, Rashad Penny. And then we closed down the season by going down to Arizona and beating a playoff team in the same sort of thing. So I'm kind of hopeful that Carroll can sort of spark this same sort of magic with this team this year. And I always feel like, and I get the whole thing, like, if this team isn't like super built up for the playoffs, losing isn't the worst thing because then you get higher draft picks and all this sort of stuff. But I just sort of feel like with the young talent that is on this roster right now, I feel like finishing strong would be best.
I agree.
It would be best for them to feel that and to get a taste of that, as opposed to going into next season, with whatever various uncertainties. And and I gotta say, like, if they lose out, going 1-7 in the second half of the season isn't a really great look, and so like that, and who knows what that might inspire, how that shifts the thinking of like ownership in the front office and all that sort of stuff. So I just feel like, I just love to see him finish strong.
I would too. And I hear that Tyler Lockett has a chance of coming back for at least the last game of the season. So that would be kind of cool too.
Yeah.
So why don't we talk about it? So the Jets are going to be coming to town. This Jets team, like that defense is for real.
Real
but
good.
Zach Wilson is horrible.
He won't be playing.
He won't be
he's
playing.
already been benched.
But and then who's Michael White? Is that
Mike White?
Mike White. It's not like he's that much better. So
He's a lot better. He's a lot better than Zach Wilson.
Yeah. He's
the
played
team
better.
plays for him.
Yeah. I
They
think the
like
jury's
Zach
still
Wilson.
out as to how good he actually is, but he's played better than.
He's had two fantastic games, and then he got basically punctured in the ribs. So we don't know yet how good he is, but he has incredible potential. And I think he showed up in the way that Purdy showed up, where people were like, oh, okay. Maybe there's something here.
Yeah.
We won't know because he got hurt. So we'll see against the Seahawks. I think that's going to be a huge test, assuming he plays, which it looks like he will.
He's gonna play. Yeah, they already said they will.
So what do you think, Curtis? How's this game gonna go?
I'm gonna do a homer thing. I'm gonna say I think Carroll rallies this team, and they're trending better on defense. And I've been super down on this defense pretty much most of the season, but the way they played the 49ers, who have a way better offense than the Jets do, and the way they played Mahomes, and that offense is way better. I mean, the Jets is pretty much the defense. Like that's right there. So if Seattle's defense keeps trending the way it is, I think we can beat them 23-19. I'll say close game.
I like it.
Would that be scoregami? That feels like scoregami.
I don't think so.
Yeah, I feel like I've seen like old Seattle, San Francisco 49ers with Jim Harbaugh type finishes like that before in the past.
What do you think, Millie?
It's funny because similar to Kansas City, I had this as a big upset, but I no longer feel that way because I am wrong about everything. But no, I'm gonna go homer on this one too. I think now we're in that nothing left to lose place. I think the Jets are a little on their heels after the quarterback situation and how things have gone for them the last couple of weeks. I think it's a Nickelodeon slime game.
I know,
So
it's the
who doesn't
Nickelodeon
want to
slime
be on
game.
that video? Like, come on, give me some Noah Fant in the end zone with the slime. I'm all about it. So I actually, by the way, we are favored to win in the odds books. It's Seattle
right?
by 1.5 points right now. So I'm gonna go Hawks 27, Jets 21.
Lana, what do you got?
I have the Hawks gotten score dominant. I don't think they have.
Sorry,
Didn't they do
Oh.
a scoregami earlier this year?
they did. It was in the
Okay.
New Orleans game.
Yeah.
Got it. So then I won't call that. I was gonna say 25-18 Hawks, just for the sake of fuck it. Yeah, 25-18 Hawks. I think
Do
I
it.
may as well. Like, Pete Carroll and his scoregami. I just think that we're a better team, and it'll be fun to see Sauce Gardner and Tariq Woolen.
Yeah.
I think that'll be like seeing those on the same, so those two dudes on the same playing field, and I think that Tariq gets a pick, and I think that it might be what elevates him to that rookie of the year.
Man, that would be awesome. My brain wants to say this is going to be a low scoring game, but my intuition is saying this is going to be a high scoring game. I just feel it in my gut. I think this offense is going to come alive for the first time in like 5 weeks. And I think K9 looks good. He looked really good last week. He was like cutting and juking and jiving, and he was doing all the stuff he was doing, earlier this season, and making like really great plays. I think it's Seahawks 34, Jets 28.
Sorry, 34-28.
Yeah.
34-28.
Yeah.
All right.
That would not be scoregami.
Yeah.
Dan's going all in. I love it.
That'd be
Going all in.
classic.
But this is a
Geno
kitchen
Smith
sink game.
and Mike White shootout that
That's right.
everyone was anticipating before the season began.
I think the Jets will probably lean on the run game a little bit. This one, we'll see what the Seahawks defense can do with that. That was the strength of the 49ers, and they held up pretty dang well. So that was nice. And then even, holding a mobile Patrick Mahomes, that was also pretty impressive. So maybe they got it figured out. That would be nice. I know it's stupid and cheesy, but I kind of dig those Nickelodeon games.
Oh, they're great. I totally agree.
The Broncos played the Nickelodeon game last Sunday, and Patrick Starr was clowning on Russell Wilson, which, I mean, come on. Are you not entertained by that?
If for some reason Sling doesn't carry Nickelodeon, I was trying to find that game. I was so sad that I couldn't watch it.
Yeah. You want to dive into some dorking? Let's dork out about some stuff. For end of the year, let's revisit some of our favorite things that we've dorked about this year. I wanted to start out. I wanted to dork out about my favorite Seattle sports game of the year, and I wanted to give that to the Mariners when they played the Yankees in that 18-inning classic. I was there, seeing it from a private suite, which was just like, for me, it was perfect sports.
It was Luis Castillo's first home game too,
and
right?
it was Luis Castillo's first home game. It was just an absolute incredible game. And if it doesn't end up on a top 10 list of baseball games for this year, then there should be some reckonings, because that
it is on MLB's top 10 of the year.
Good. It was one of the most incredible baseball games I've ever watched in my entire life. And it just showed the guts of that team. And it was just super, super fun to watch. But I'll leave it up. Well, what do we want to talk about? What are we dorking out about? What's our favorite things? Who wants to go? Curtis?
Yeah, I guess my favorite, I probably have multitude favorite sports moments. Definitely probably the top of my favorite sports moment was on my birthday watching the Mariners sweep the Blue Jays in Toronto in the playoffs.
Yeah, that was
Oh
man, that was another, that was that was almost on that on my top. Yeah,
that was pretty
that
cool.
was a great game. Yeah.
Being at the last regular season game of Sue Bird and then her final game as a professional basketball player in the playoffs was pretty special. Being around the crowd, listening to the Sue chants, the thank yous, all that sort of stuff, getting swept up in the emotions of it. Weirdly, the Storm lost both those games. So there was the emotion of the disappointment that, she wasn't finishing out and sort of like the kind of, the fairy tale sort of way
Last Dance,
in which we would love, but also sort of being there and just, just watching an incredibly special, lifelong Seattle athlete, hang it up. Was really super cool. And then I would say being invited by the Seattle Seahawks to be a part of their documentary series, The Sound, and talk about my experiences and perspectives of being a lifelong Seahawks fan was super duper special. So those would be my big three sports moments.
Yeah, that's awesome. That is that episode number 4 that you were on of The Sound?
It was episode 6.
Episode 6. If you haven't seen it, anybody listening to this, check it out. It's a really, really fantastic episode. And Curtis, he has a lot to say. He has a lot of really great things to say about that. Yeah, it's good stuff. And I think there also, that one is about the tight ends. Which is really
it was
fun.
about tight ends, and the tight end room, and their unique.
Those guys are
quirky bonds and stuff. Yeah, it was fun.
Yeah, that's good stuff. Millie, what do you want to? What are we dorking out about here?
Well, I guess real quick, some sports moments that meant a lot to me this year. I mean, probably breaking the streak is the biggest one for me. I mean, Big Dumper just turning this team into something special was amazing. And I also was at Sue Bird's last game, and that was really special as well. I've been dorking out a lot about television this year. I think the majority of my dorking out in every podcast episode has been about television. So I'd like to talk about some television.
Let's talk about some television.
End of the year.
Yeah.
And I made a top 10 list. I believe Allanah has also made a top 10 list. So we're going to talk about some TV shows.
Yeah.
And I want to preface it with something, because I had to redo this whole damn list right before we started because I had that moment where all of a sudden I went, oh shit, because I'd gone through all these lists for 2022 of people's best, and they help inform me and remind me of things that I watch. And you know what I didn't watch until 2022?
Oh no.
Station 11. So that just threw everything up in the air, because I finally got really into Station 11 and lost my flipping mind over how absolutely amazing it was. So that happened. And then I remembered that I also didn't see Yellow Jackets until 2022, which was a 2021 show. And it's fucking phenomenal. So it threw my whole list off, is what I'm telling you right now, because I had to get Yellow Jackets and Station 11. And when I think about Yellow Jackets, I also have to include the Wilds because I made the mistake of watching them back to back. So if you ever want to get really confused about your trapped somewhere bunch of teenage women in strange circumstances and wacky weird things happen, watch the Wilds and Yellow Jackets back to back, and you won't remember 100% which plot belongs to which show. But that did come in at number 4. And I bring up those because I know they're on Alannah's list because she watched that shit last year. But you will be happy to know.
Yeah, like Station 11 would have been high on my list last year. I think it. I remember it being like number 3 or 4.
I think it was.
I know for Beth it was number 1. But like For All Mankind season 2 was my number 1 last year. I thought that was a perfect piece of television. Would you, Millie, since we both made top 10 lists, do you want to go back and forth doing? You do your 10, I'll do my 10.
I love it.
Yeah, let's do
awesome.
that.
I love it.
And I do want to hear from both of you when you've seen it, Curtis and Dan. This is
absolutely. Yeah.
Awesome.
Well, I'll start with my number 10, which is one that I know we all love, and I feel kind of weird and bad about it being 10 and not higher, is Reservation Dogs.
Mm-hmm.
I was behind. I have not finished the most recent season, so this is like season 1, most of season 2. Or there's only 2, right, so far?
Correct.
Yes,
Yeah.
2
Okay.
so far.
I was lagging behind all of you in starting it, and I finally started it. And I think by the 3rd episode, I started doing something that I only do with shows I really like, but I'm scared of how every episode's going to end. So I'll go to the next episode and watch like 5 minutes to figure out like where we're at emotionally, if we've carried anything over from the previous episode. And once my anxiety is low enough, I stop it. And that's where I'll pick up next. Like, it's such a wonderful show. It's so well written, and the kids are just amazing. And I loved in season 2 expanding it a lot more to the aunties. Like, it's so very special and in its own class as far as a television show goes for me right now, with its blend of humor and amazing writing, and non-traditional stories. I just really, really dug it. And it's number 10 for me.
It's my number 6, actually.
That one ended up in my top 5. Reservation Dogs.
That is one of my favorite shows for sure.
Yeah. I was gonna say, is it between Res Dogs and Andor for you?
For who? For me?
Yeah. For like top of the year.
You know, I've got really super recency bias because I just had like a week's worth of free HBO Max, and I totally binged through Peacemaker, and I couldn't stop watching that show at all. And it actually might be my favorite show of the year.
Nice.
And that's taking absolutely nothing away from Andor or Reservation Dogs. It's just probably it completely came out of left field for me. I had like zero expectations of that, and I was just like, holy fuck, this is really good. And
it really takes place in Washington State, in like the woodsy parts of like Olympia, basically. Which is
that
really
where it's supposed to be located?
Evergreen is like Seattle and south of Seattle.
Shit, now I gotta watch it again. Yeah, there was so much about that show that I don't want to give any illusions that my childhood was anywhere like near his childhood was and stuff, but being the fact that his character is within the same sort of age range that I'm in, and you know, being a total product of the 80s and all of that sort of, you know, G.I. Joe shit and like heavy rock and all that sort of stuff, that I feel like, at least in my circle, you know, in like middle school, junior high, high school, was kind of all about that sort of stuff. Like there was a lot that I connected with, and it was definitely it was just a really fascinating sort of example of how fucking complex relationships are,
Mhm.
and and I love the way the season ended and those last final moments where he's sitting down on the porch and the various little beings in his life just sort of sat down with him and stuff. And it was I found it very amusing and sort of moving at the same time. And
It's James Gunn. He's your perfect director.
And it has me super excited about him taking over the whole DC, studios and stuff.
Mhm.
And now I'm sort of jacked about that because what a coup that seems to be potentially,
Yeah.
Yeah, that's probably that. Andor was terrific. I almost timed out on it and was like not even gonna watch any further. And I'm
we can get to Andor. It'll show up again in my list.
Yeah, okay. I'll shut up.
But I will jump in to say, since we talked about it, Peacemaker also makes my list.
Nice.
And it blew my mind, but Peacemaker's my number 2.
Nice.
Oh, wow.
I'm with you, Curtis. I think it is surprising and delightful. It's a redemption story you don't see coming.
Mhm.
And it's also just really fucked up and weird. So it's everything that keeps me super engaged. Especially for an action franchise at its core. So it's a number 2 for me.
If I can give it, it's definitely got the best opening credits of the year.
Yeah.
Yeah, unbelievable.
Yeah.
Unbelievable.
Yeah.
I did in fact hurt myself trying to learn the dance. It's fine.
Yeah. You'll have to show that to us. What do you got, Allanah? What's your number 10?
So I cheated with number 10. I'm going to just name off a couple of my honorable mentions, which include Peacemaker, the Orville Single Drunk Female, Somebody Somewhere, and Ghosts. Those are really the shows that stuck with me, but aren't in my top 10. And then I cheated a little bit at number 10 because I themed it around actually well-executed queer romances that are not queer baiting. For those who don't know, queer baiting is when you hint at there being romantic interest between two characters, but you don't commit to it so that you can get all of it you can get all the positive feedback from the queer community without actually proclaiming that these characters are queer. And the leader of that anti-queer baiting is Our Flag Means Death. Because it was like, oh, they're gonna do it, aren't they? They're gonna flirt and do all this stuff, and then they actually connected and they kissed, and it was Taika Waititi and oh god, what's his name? Not Reese. I can't remember his name right now, but the pirate captain from that. And it was beautiful. It was hilarious. It was wonderful. Paired with that is Heartstopper, which is just a queer love story between two British boys at an all-boys school. It was a Netflix show. It was wonderful, and based on a graphic novel, and it really kept the energy of the graphic novel as it told the story. And lastly, at number 10 is A League of Their Own, which I just thought was a tremendous reimagining of that series and focusing strongly and heavily on how these queer women were a part of this world, a part of this reality back in the 40s. And then also focusing on some other issues that the movie didn't have time for. But really, I grouped those three together because they were realized queer stories in otherwise well-accepted, appreciated media in a way that I haven't seen meaningfully in a long time. And so, they all kind of also tie into what I view as, so my number 4 show of the year, which I'll get into, taught me what I want out of a TV show. And every single show on here, with limited exceptions, have it, which is I want it to be 3/4 comedy, and then I want it to punch me in the gut. I want to just be emotionally ravaged by it after having this hilarious experience. And my number 1, my number 2, my number 3, number 4, 5, 6, like all of them except for my number 9. And even my number 9 has that too. So it was such a realization of this tone that I appreciate, and something that like half-hour shows, because my list is littered with half-hour shows. That's something that they do so well. And it's been awesome to see that kind of form, as opposed to like 5 to 10 years ago, it was all the Breaking Bad, the Mad Men, all these shows that are an hour long. And right now, the strength in storytelling is really in the half-hour shows. So my number 10, again, Our Flag Means Death, Heartstopper, and A League of Their Own.
I need to see Our Flag Means Death. I am such a huge Taika Waititi fan, and
so
pirates, gay pirates. I mean, bi pirates, really. I mean, come on.
Trans pirates, gay pirates,
yeah.
bi pirates.
Yeah, I mean, it's a Taika Waititi show, so it's going to be bi energy just in general. In fact, What We Do in the Shadows season 4, is that what premiered in 2022? That ended up on my top 5.
Nice.
And kind of talking about what you were talking about, going back to what you're talking about a little, Allanah, about, 3/4 comedy and then just like that one gut punch. I thought What We Do in the Shadows hit that this season. That in ways that they hadn't in previous seasons, where they actually got like emotionally real. I'm with you on that. I really want my TV to do that. I just like that feeling of just being wrecked. Yeah. What do we got for number 9?
Okay. My number 9 show of 2022 that I watched was Andor. We just finished Andor last night. I think I saw the final episode, and the emotion of that show and of finishing it and getting to the end. I didn't even realize it was the end. We had kind of discussed the fact that this was the last episode, and I forgot at some point. And so at the end of it, I was like, yeah. And so now, and then I was like, oh wait, this is the end of the season.
I had the same effect. That had the same effect on me. I was just kind of like, oh cool, I can't wait for next week's episode. And then I was just like,
which
online reading about like season finale. I was just like, well,
but it's also a natural great stopping point at the same time.
Yeah, it was terrific. It was like it finished where it needed to finish.
It totally finishes where it needs to finish. The payoff is absolutely worth the moments where you are like, did anything just happen in the last 20 minutes? Because it did, but it is very purposefully paced. It is very purposely designed and beautifully, strangely written, to put you into a world you think you know and you know nothing about. The idea that you want to go live in the Star Wars universe, and like, no, you don't. The Star Wars universe is in the middle of a rebellion against an empire. Most of us aren't part of the Jedi Order. Like, that's not the adventure you're going to have, most likely. But we all like to pretend we're going to be the magical wizard. And because of that, it has obviously the energy of Rogue One, because it's the prequel. I mean, we meet Cassian Andor, and he is not a good person, and it is absolutely a redemption story. But the additional storylines, the way they come together, having this oh god, the villain, she's just fantastic. I don't even know the actor's name, but the downturn of her mouth is constant. Like, in no way do you think this woman is approachable, and she is absolutely believable in her role. And as a woman within this empire, in which, especially because of when it was written, like, there aren't any women in power. So like, this is what it would take, right, to be a high level general in the empire. And there's a lot of storylines we've barely scratched the surface of. So I'm
Sometimes I
really
really like it in
where it
storytelling
goes.
when I'm emotionally confused with something, like, and I found her very emotionally confusing because, she was incredibly strong in the face of the misogyny around her and stuff, but at the same time, she's a fucking fascist. I mean, she's
She
dark.
wants to be a leader in a fascist empire. So
So it's like,
yeah.
I'm kind of like, am I supposed to be rooting for it? No, I don't think I am.
No, she's a bad person. And that's part of the beauty of the show. And I think part of why some people who don't like Star Wars like Rogue One, these are very real people.
Yeah.
These are not fantasy people. None of them are good people. There isn't a single person except for the sassy droid, who, thank God there's a sassy droid. But barring the sassy droid, no one is 100% a good person. And even Cassian's mother, she's probably the closest thing, but her history and how she came to meet Cassian, either, and she's not a good person either. None of these people are all good. They're all very real, though. And it's a show that's worth your time. And there are some acting moments and writing in the final 3 episodes that just blew me away.
I kind of love too how it shows you what hopelessness can do to a person. Like these people aren't good people because of the world they're living in, because they're living in this world of just absolute hopelessness. And what else can they do but just kind of give into that, right? Yeah.
Absolutely. And the duality it takes even to be, what other historically we would look at as these good people, like the leader of the rebellion and the person who's bringing all these rebels together. Well, that's not done in a nice way. And having spies means letting people die. Like, that's just part of it, right? Everyone's complicated. It makes for really, really riveting television.
Yeah.
For me. Allanah, what's your number 9?
So I think going forward, where we have overlap, we should wait until the person who has it ranked higher goes to talk about the show. Does that work for you? Because like we have overlap. My 7 is your 1.
Okay.
Does that make sense? Your 8 is my 2. Then that way we can speed it up a little bit and we can both talk about it. So my number 9 is another tie, last tie. It's because format-wise they're similar. We Are Here and Big Brunch. They're both reality shows. One is a reality competition show in the Big Brunch, and the other is a reality slice of life show in We Are Here. The Big Brunch was just a fantastic first season of a cooking show that was hosted by Dan Levy with Sola Al-Wali as one of the judges, and then another guy whose name I don't remember because he's the standard white guy on it. And it was just a really warm, friendly cooking show that had a lot of queer energy, which I was there for, and was really focused on letting chefs tell their stories about what they wanted their business to be. And I think the best chef won, and I appreciated that. We Are Here is the single most important television show on right now. In my mind, it is about drag queens going to oftentimes rural, oftentimes small, oftentimes Florida communities, and bringing in people who haven't done drag before to put on a drag show. The season finale is this coming Friday. I'm confident that it's going to stay at my number 9. I'm also confident that I'm going to weep throughout it. It is beautiful storytelling. It is important storytelling. It confronts this strain of anti-trans rhetoric, of anti-gay rhetoric head on in the places where it's happening. On these last 2 episodes, one of the participants in it is a Pulse shooting survivor who was there that night. And then there are 2 there's a trans woman and a mom of a trans kid who are participating. And it's magic, and it's emotional, and it's fucking necessary. And your kids will be better by watching it. They will be better people. I've noticed how my kid interacts with queerness because of that show and because of kind of how we talk about it. It's really positive. It's tremendous and really important. So yeah, it's essential viewing, I would say. It's also, both of those are on HBO Max. I'll move to my number 8 now, and then
Yeah, go for it.
you can do 8. Better Things, which is Pamela. It was originally created by Pamela Adlon and Louis C.K. And Louis C.K. dropped out after season 2, thankfully. And she has written and directed every single episode since season 3. Season 5, which was the finale, was just a masterclass of slice of life storytelling. And it had that same kind of Atlanta Reservation Dogs feel of this could be about anyone in this kind of community going through anything at any time. And it was very moving. And it was a tremendous send off to the show as we watched her like say goodbye to meaningful members of her family. And it was also frequently hilarious. Just beautiful acting, beautiful writing, beautiful filmmaking. And she really obviously put so much of herself into it. She has 3 daughters in the show. She has 3 daughters. They're not the same people. And it's well worth your time. If you haven't seen any of it, I would highly recommend starting at season 1 and just letting the ride happen.
Fully agreed. And she is fantastic.
Yeah.
She's just so good. Yeah. Millie, what do you got for number 8?
My number 8 is Alana's number 2, so I'm going to skip that for now. I pulled up the spreadsheet, Alana. I'm on it.
Cool.
Got some coordination
You
going
can say
here.
what it is, and we'll talk about it when we get to me.
No.
Okay.
Okay. Keep us in suspense.
My number 7, I believe, is not on your list. Well, it is, but it's not a numbered one. My number 7 is Only Murders in the Building, season 2, which we all watched. And for me, it was a little bit of a letdown to season 1. Season 1 just had my heart in a way that was new.
Mm-hmm.
I think season 2 is a fantastic season of television. I think it's really fun. I think they opened it up and took it in a way that kept the spirit of the show, but allowed them to grow, which was neat. And at the end of the day, it's just that these 3 characters are just wonderful to watch. And the writing is fun and the visuals are probably my favorite thing. I don't know what all the proper words are, but basically the set design and the cinematography and the costuming, it's just all in its own world in a way that very few TV shows can do.
Totally.
And they can, so they go all out with it. And I love being pulled into this different world. It's still our world, but it's brighter.
Yeah.
So for me, Only Murders is my number 7.
And I really liked it too. I just thought it was a step down from season 1, like you did, and there were just a lot of other shows that I liked a lot more. But the combination of Steve Martin, Martin Short, and Selena Gomez is like, it's magic. And who would have thought that trio would be magic? But they really are.
Yeah, truly, like they share just a chemistry that is almost unmatched on TV. I felt the same way as you. I didn't see it as like more disappointing than season 1, but season 1 was just such a surprise for me. And then season 2, you just kind of know what it is. It didn't end up on like kind of my top lists, but it's because I was more emotionally invested in some other shows like Reservation Dogs and White Lotus and Severance and some of these others that I consider at the top of the list. But also, I mean, just really fantastic. We've talked a lot about that on this podcast.
I thought season 2 wasn't as laugh out loud for me as season
Yeah.
one. And that's what I found myself missing. But I wouldn't necessarily say that it was a huge step down, because it was just a very different, like, I feel like tonally it was sort of
A little
different.
different.
They
Yeah.
wanted to get a more introspective with, each of the characters going through this whole shit with, father's shit, and stuff like
Totally.
that. And it was kind of that was cool, I was good with it. But I did sort of feel like that a lot of the pratfalls and a lot of the visual gags that season one was largely built on, which is, iconic Steve Martin stuff, was sort of, it was almost kind of like, I felt like, let's not make season two about that anymore. Let's get into something else, sort of thing like that.
And it kind of expanded outside of the main trio a little bit more.
Yeah.
Where we're at number 7 for you, Allanah? Is that where we're at?
So my number 7 is Millie's number 1.
Okay, so we'll hold off.
So-
Unless you want to name it.
No, I won't spoil
Okay.
it.
Yeah.
My
Keep it
number
in
6,
suspense.
we've already talked about, which is Reservation Dogs.
Reservation Dogs.
Right. Which I just loved. I thought it was great. I don't need to talk about it more though.
Yeah.
I'm really glad there's
the
a third
last
season.
few episodes of season 2 were devastating to me.
Oh, for sure.
Well, I haven't
Yeah.
watched those yet.
Yeah. You're in for
Billy
a ride.
Jack is.
There's a reason I haven't watched
You're
them
in
yet.
for yeah, I totally.
I can't get my wife to commit to it. Like, she's tried a few episodes and she's just like, she's not feeling it. She feels like they're all a bunch of like delinquent kids, and I'm kind of like, well,
You just need to get
Yeah.
into it.
I mean,
One of my favorite moments in season
Lean
2
married a
was
delinquent kid. Like, it's
yeah. One of my favorite moments in season 2 were the people who came in to talk about like decolonizing and all.
So good.
So
That's the
good.
episode I'm on.
Is it? It's so
It's a great episode.
yeah.
Oh, good. Okay.
Millie, where are we at?
Millie.
Number 6?
So
Number 5?
we're on, I think on my number 6, which it's
All
weird.
right.
I was crossing it out and then somehow it ended up back at number 6, and I'm just going to go with it because clearly my brain was like, no, you need to own your horrible taste in television. So one of the series that I watched all of, except they just released at the beginning of a new season, was Doom Patrol. It's on HBO, and I just love it. It's so weird, and it goes off the rails over and over again, but it is open and inclusive and fun and different, and I can't say enough about it. You kind of just have to experience it. I know I talked about it a bit, I think last year on the pod, maybe, or I guess it would have been this year still. No, it was like the beginning of this year when I started it. And it stays at its level. It has some moments that are better than others. But jumping into, I can't even think of his name, the person who is also a universe, basically, and just that whole plot line and idea is still in my brain, and you just have to watch it to believe it. It's fucking weird, and I really dig it, and I'm excited to start the new season.
And it's got Brendan Fraser in it, right?
It does.
Yeah. It's got a couple Seattle actors. It's got Brendan Fraser, and Riley Shanahan is in it too.
It's his
Seattle
body.
actor. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. It's his body. Yeah. Why don't we go to number 5? Millie, what do you got for number 5?
I can't tell you what my number 5 is because it's Alannah's number 1.
Oh, right. Alannah, what do you got
My
for
number 5 is The White Lotus. I thought season 2 was a gigantic step up from season 1. I loved season 1, but I felt like the characters were just so well developed in season 2 and
Agreed.
treated with such care. And I think that Mike White, who is also a different Mike White, the creator of the White Lotus, is
not backup
really
quarterback of the Jets.
not backup quarterback for the Jets, but he's a tremendously humanistic storyteller.
Yes.
And he was so clearly inspired by the reality of filming in this Italian villa, effective, or this, Italian hotel. And the fact that, were you going to watch it, Millie and Curtis?
Yeah, I'll watch season 2.
Okay.
I've seen season 1.
Probably pick it up at some point, but
Well, then I won't spoil. The people who had happy endings were the right people to have happy endings. And the people who did not have happy endings, which, I mean, in general, it's actually, it's know that it's a comedy, and that's it. Like,
Yes.
and it's important that you remember that throughout, that it's a bedroom farce with teeth. And I think that'll affect your watching of it in a very positive way. But I just thought it was really great storytelling, and I was riveted, and I didn't care what the mystery was or how the mystery was solved or anything like that. I just wanted to watch it for the storytelling, and it just landed. So
Mike
yes.
White even came out and said, in the first season, framing it around a dead body was purely just to get people to watch it, that he actually he didn't care about that as the overall theme or emotional investment or whatever. It was purely get eyeballs, and now it's a pattern, so they're just gonna start every season with dead body, but the dead body or but it's purely just a device, and don't expect the payoff, that to be the payoff. Expect like the actual emotional storytelling to be the payoff. And also, I was telling a friend of mine who, she was saying, I can't really get a vibe on this show. And I was like, well, because the show wants to play in the sandbox of a bunch of genres, and at its heart, it's a dark satire, I would say, but it treats its characters with such reverence and honesty that it can turn into like sentimental drama, occasionally. And you just kind of like have to buy into that. But I dearly love it. And that was also near the top of my list, White Lotus. Yeah.
Mike White has been making TV and film for like 30 years. And this is his first massive hit outside of School of Rock. Like, he directed School of Rock and was in it. But beyond that, like, he's just been like indie TV show guy, or Chuck and Buck, which I don't know if you've seen that. It's a weird movie. And so the fact that he has the White Lotus as this thing, which was basically an ad or a executive at HBO going, hey, Mike, I know you write fast. Can you do something that we can film during the pandemic? And he was like, sure. And he had a script and a cast within a month. And then they filmed the whole thing. And then it was a huge hit. And so they did it again. And it was even, I would say, arguably a bigger hit for season 2. So I just think it's cool that he's had that opportunity. Read up on Mike White. He's a really interesting dude. So then we go to my number 4. Is that right, Millie?
Yes.
Okay. My number 4 is This Is Going to Hurt. It is a show from Britain that is about the NHS. The perspective character is played by Ben Whishaw, who's been in a ton of things. You've probably seen him. And it is a Fleabag style in that he talks to the camera a lot. And it is about the failures of the NHS as a system, especially in how it impacts doctors and patients, and who benefits from that as a result. And it is based as an autobiographical TV show, based on the life of a guy who later quit being a doctor, named Adam Kay. It is hysterically funny for the first 70% of every episode. And then it will just knock you on your ass with tears. It is tremendous television. I cannot recommend it enough. It's on AMC Plus. I get it through Prime. I don't know if that's because I paid for it or because it comes with Prime. It is staggeringly good, and we finished it like 4 nights ago, 5 nights right before we went to Great Wolf Lodge. It was the thing I was kind of holding off on because I knew pretty quickly that it was gonna be in my top 10, and it moved up to top 4. It's the way it gets you to care about the world is unbelievably good. And the only reason it isn't in my top 3 is because the next 3 shows all have that same kind of vibe of like making you laugh, making you feel weird, giving you some kind of like really up emotion, and then just gut punching you, and do it a little bit more consistently, or I have more trust in the story, in the world that it's about, because I don't give a shit about doctors, at least in storytelling. But he's an obstetrician, so he's delivering babies, and we get to see a lot of that. So it's very graphic in that regard too. But it's tremendous television. So I cannot recommend it enough. What is your number 4, Millie?
Well, real quick, my number 4 and my number 3 I've already mentioned, and it just kind of sucked because they're the holdovers from last year. I feel like if it's an entire year later, and almost a year later since I've seen them, even because it was definitely Q1 of 2022, the fact that the Wilds, Yellow Jackets, and Station 11 are still living in my head, and I can't wait for season 2 of Yellow Jackets, which is really taking its time, but it's coming. Those 3 are my 4 and my 3. So I don't want to go back and rehash it again and again, but it's just good stuff. I was a holdout on Station 11 for a really long time, and once it sort of captures you, you can't look away until you're exhausted, and that's the only like reason to take breaks. It's so good, but it's very emotional, and
it's a weeper.
It's just really beautiful. And you find these connections that I feel like the filmmaking has helped you along the way to make, but they don't make them all for you. It's not spoon-fed to you. You feel the connection sometimes before you make the full connection, and that's not something that television and even film can do very often. So Station 11 is super special, and I didn't even think about it, and it screwed up my whole top 10 list, but it's worth it.
And then on to my number 3. Is that right?
Yeah.
Season 3 of Barry.
Oh man, yeah.
Hilarious and gut punches. Like,
yep.
It's and what was that, Curtis?
Don't tell me anything.
Okay.
Oh, Curtis. Oh man.
The filmmaking of it is outstanding. The performances are outstanding.
So good.
It's hard. It's one of the. It makes you examine how you root for characters that are the bad guy.
Yeah.
And also it makes you examine, and also Vanessa Bayer gives a 5-minute performance that is among the best on TV from the last year. It was just tremendous. So I really loved it. And Gut Punch, yep, it meets that level.
Absolutely. And just hilarious. Like,
yeah.
It might be the funniest season, but also just the gut punchiest season.
Yeah.
It goes to almost absurd lengths sometimes, and right when you think it might be going too far, it just kind of like reins it all back in. Really, really terrific television.
We still haven't watched season 3, but I have to say I've seen it on just about every top 10 list and pretty high. So in addition to Alannah's recommendation, I definitely is inspiring me to get back in on the Barry train.
The reason the Barry's 3 and not 1 or 2 is because it starts off a little slow. Like it's getting back into it. But then once Vanessa Bayer shows up in that episode, from there on out, it's all bangers. So So then my number 2, which Millie mentioned was her number 8, is Severance. I think we talked a lot about that on the show.
We have.
It's just weird, awesome TV with the single best episode of television of the year for me in that season finale. When watching that, I didn't breathe. I didn't breathe for the entire episode. And watching Adam Scott, watching all these Taylor Trammell, Zach Cherry, and Britt something. I wanted to remember her name. But watching them put forth these performances where it's like a lot of people who have been supporting cast in a lot of things, like invisible supporting cast, having these opportunities to shine. The production design on that show is phenomenal. And I can't wait for season 2 whenever it comes. It was also one of those ones where I got in on the ground floor immediately. I think I've watched that whole season 3 times. I just thought it was astounding TV and really vital storytelling about today.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah, I have a story to tell you, which is I hadn't watched it yet. I think y'all know I finally joined the cult and got Apple TV very recently. And December 26th is an office holiday for many people because Christmas fell on a Sunday, and I am one of them. And I was lucky enough to say, I am exhausted and I just want to watch TV all day. What? Oh, I know. I'll start Severance. I'm done. Y'all, it's the 27th. I binged it in a day.
Did you breathe during the last episode of that season?
Nobody,
because I did.
It was so late, and I'm like watching it with headphones in the bed, and Evan comes in, he needs to go to sleep. I just keep pausing it. So I will probably rewatch the finale just because the pacing of it, and it was the end when the thing happens and everything is like, holy shit. So I'll probably go back and rewatch all of that because there's also just a lot of pieces in it, of reveals and pieces, and a lot of it I was like, oh, I know, oh, yep, that's what's happening. Just that last episode is fantastic. My biggest surprise, I would say, is that I was like, who is that? Who is that? Episode 2, Patricia Arquette.
Oh yeah.
What?
Yep.
She's great.
Yeah.
She is fun. I have issues with her in most things. Like, she drives me a little crazy, a little bonkers with herness. And in this, it's like this perfect pinnacle of a lot of roles that she's done and pulling them together into this complete character where for me, she entirely disappeared. That performance is fantastic. But they all are. They're so, and John Turturro and Walken.
I love
like,
that
it's
story.
Just, there's so much.
Their relationship.
It also, and same deal. Like, it took me a minute. The first episode was like, oh, everybody likes this though. I guess I'll keep going. I don't know how I feel about this. And then it was 8 hours later. It is that good. It should probably be higher on my list, but I just saw it, so I don't think it's entirely sunk into me yet.
It was written by a graduate from the Western Theater Department.
Yeah.
He grew up in Olympia, for those people that care about that sort of thing.
Yeah.
He went to Western with a bunch of people who were Ghostlight folks. They were all in the same classes together, so a bunch of my friends were real excited about that.
Yeah.
We know people who were in like the workshops when it was starting out as a stage production before it turned into a TV show. Yeah. I love the guy who played Milchick. For me, that he was like a revelation for me. I just think he's such a charismatic and outstanding actor, and I hope he becomes a star because he's got those qualities. I love that.
Seen it yet.
Oh man. Yeah, you got to check it out.
I don't know
'cause
why
it's-
I've been slow on that one.
Yeah,
I think
you
because
Hey, I just did it. I hear you.
your laziness and like, I don't know. Heather, again, as another one, I'm affected by my wife's, choices. She was like, she went 2 episodes in and was kind of like, nah, not for me. So
So are we at number 1? What do we got for number
No,
1?
Millie's number 2,
Oh,
which we already talked about, right?
Yeah, mine was Peacemaker. So
Peacemaker,
we've already
okay.
done my number 2.
what do you got for number 1?
I have The Resort,
Which was my number 7.
which is another show that we have talked about at length. So I don't need to go on and on about it. And this is a long pod, so I won't. Other than to say, if there's one show that I recommended to every single human being this year, it's The Resort. And I'm like, but you got to get Peacock. But I don't know. It's kind of free, but it's kind of not. And I don't know. I subscribed to it finally. They had a special. It was 99 cents a month for 1 year. I said sold, because it comes, if you have Xfinity internet, it is free. The Peacock app is free through your Xfinity internet. The show, though, not Peacock, the show itself is it's just everything I want out of a show. It has magical, mystical properties. It has subplots and side adventures that are worth your time and ultimately do have something to do with your main plot. But even if they didn't, the character development is also important enough to merit the time that is given to little things like the Frias family history. It's all important. Nick Offerman as the father and his side quests and life. These things, they all matter. Nothing's wasted in this show. But at its core, to me, it's emotional. It's about connection and letting go. And it's about being able to come from a place. I mean, it's pretty early on in the show that you learn that she's had a miscarriage and that has been an issue in their marriage for years, because she hasn't been able to come back from that and reconnect with her husband. It really is mostly on her. He's trying really hard. And the way that we get there all matters, and it all matters in this weird, magical, mystical way. It is just, for me, you're talking about like your perfect show, like so much of the show is my perfect television, because I love that otherworld element.
So I really deeply loved this show as well. It was a huge surprise, like Peacock. I mean, granted, one of my favorite shows from last year was also on Peacock, which is coming back for a season 2. It's the Muslim punk girl band, We Are Lady Parts. Highly recommend that. But this, I've never seen magical realism presented as earnestly as it was in this. Like Lodge 49, which is another show I'm rewatching right now, has a lot of magical realism elements, but this, based on where they were and the world that they were engaging with, being in Mexico, based on the stories that they were holding on to about themselves, especially the Frias detective guy that he came into, and how that affected their relationships and how they were moving through the world and how that impacted one another as they were searching for this mystery. That was a really fascinating time dilation mystery. All of those things fit together in a perfect box. And it had genuine magic at the end, genuine and actual magic. I gasped, and I don't react like that to TV, but the resolution of the story was stunning and surprising and earned and meaningful and perfectly encapsulated the whole show and what it was doing. even though it was outlandish and like, oh my God, how it was actual magic. And the fact that it went there was just amazing. And so I share your love for this show. It's the one show that I rated. I kind of gave these shows scores, and I scored it a 9, but I knew it was in my top 10, even though every other show in my top 10 is a 10. And that was just a gut thing in terms of like filmmaking and story and all of that. But like my enjoyment of it was more than that because of that magic. So, and I have also recommended it to everyone I know, but you and my boss are the only people I know who watched it. So like Peacock. So my number 1 is The Bear. I think another theme about this year is surprise. Like this, I look at my list and most of it is season 1s. There's like some things that are a little bit extended and some things that are loosely associated with existing IP. But The Bear was shot on a shoestring with largely unknown performers. I mean, Jeremy Allen White, the lead, was he's kind of known, and Evan Moss Backrack, who's right here, he's in Andor, and he's been around a little bit. He was also in The Dropout, and Ayo Edebiri, who is in that bandana right there. She is a voice on Big Mouth, and she's done some other things, some writing on different shows. And I should say this was your number 5. Is that right, Millie?
Yes, my number 5. And I should say, I cheated a little. Devin and I are on the last episode. We're like 5 minutes into the last episode. So we got through the review. It is, again, haven't digested it yet fully, haven't finished it, and was willing to go ahead and put it where I had it. Yeah, it's surprising. Talk about the gut punches. There aren't really that many laughs, but you enjoy it. It's good emotional food.
And episode 7, which is the episode that Amelia was kind of, I think, just referencing, is a one-shot episode about a day in a kitchen. And having worked in that type of space before, it was perfect. It was exactly
those days.
Yeah.
Wait, was it really a one-shot?
Yeah. I
The
mean,
whole thing?
there was the monologue at the start that was at AA or Allanah.
Yeah.
And then credited, and then the whole, as soon as tickets started coming in, the first shot is on the ticket thing. That's all one shot. They rehearsed it 4 times, or they ran it 4 times, start to finish, resetting props and everything, and then did it as a oneer.
Makes sense. I mean, the urgency and adrenaline of that episode is
rivaled only by the season finale of Severance.
Yeah.
Like those two, and those are my 2 favorite episodes of TV this year. I think it's a really special thing, and nobody expected it to do anything. They dropped it on Hulu all at once. It was like
no fanfare.
No fanfare. I saw one preview for it, and I was like, I'm gonna love that. I can tell. And like, this is a comedy drama that takes place in a kitchen in Chicago. Like, sign me up. I'm there. So
that was probably my favorite TV show of the year as well, The Bear. I related to it. Number one, just I cut my teeth in the kitchen. I was working in kitchens since I was 14 years old. So I just understand that world so much, and that TV show captured the world that I know in ways that I have never seen like life captured on film before. Just like I had to keep pausing episode 7 because my heart rate was up. I was like, I had that anxiety. I have just like, I've been there. But I'm also just a sucker for stories about people who aren't meeting their potential, and struggling through their own shit, whether it's their history and their own mental health, and battling their own sort of demons and those patterns that those unhealthy patterns that we can get into. Like, I relate to all of that. And I found the whole story just so deeply human. And also just like, that Sufjan Stevens song, like right at the end of it is just like, it's so perfect. Now, every time I hear that song, all I think about is those closing moments of the bear.
And the fact that the other piece of it that really, really, really worked for me, Millie, and I'm not going to spoil it, is in the last episode, the turnaround in tone from episode 7 to episode 8, because it is totally completely different. We've just been ravaged emotionally, and then we have this moment. It was very similar to White Lotus, where it was like, oh right, this is a comedy. Like the end moments, what happens in there? It's like, holy fuck, like amazing, hilarious, perfect. This changes my whole view of it. It was great. It was wonderful. And I loved it. So
yeah, I'm looking forward to it. We did watch the first few minutes. So with her having dinner in her home with, I don't know anybody's name in this show. With the guy who makes donuts.
Yeah.
We needed that.
That is,
needed it.
Yeah. But then when they get back to the restaurant, there's something that happens at the restaurant that is like, it's awesome. It's awesome.
Good. Yeah. Good. Glad to hear. Yeah. Curtis, did you watch The Bear yet?
Yeah, it was one of my favorite shows. It was one of the few shows I watched with Heather. Heather and I watched it together, and we quite enjoyed it. It took me probably about 3 episodes to really get what everybody was hyping it out to be. Like, I was kind of like, sort of like, okay, I'm not really grabbing this thing, but yeah. Once
then your boy Oliver Platt showed up and everything changed.
What's that?
Yeah, and then Oliver Platt showed up and everything changed.
Oh, what showed up?
Oliver Platt.
Oh,
and they drugged those kids with the
I don't know. I just to me, it just took a while for me to sort of get the feel of where this whole thing was going, because I sort of felt like, I didn't really initially see it as a comedy. I kind of thought like this was sort of literally kitchen sink in a really intense, sort of messed up, dysfunctional way, which is normally my cup of tea. But like, I don't have the experience of working in a kitchen, so I was coming from I think more of an outsider sort of perspective on the show. But I definitely know what it's like to be a fuck up and a screw up and struggle. So I got like a lot of that, and the cousin Mikey character and all of that sort of stuff, and I love the sous chef in the show. I thought yeah. And the ending, no spoilers at all, but I think it's one of the best endings of like a season that I've probably seen all year. It's right up there with Andor. I'll put it right up there with Andor.
Cool. Yeah. I did just want to give a quick shout out to the 2 shows that got thrown out of my top 10 list when I realized the reality of the year. And that is Reacher and Strange New Worlds, 2 shows that I also just super dug, and I've talked about on this show, so I won't do it again. But Reacher, Strange New Worlds, I love
Strange New Worlds. Strange New Worlds is great. It didn't enter my top list either, but I thought about it. But just super fun.
And I just wanted to call out I Hate Susie 2 as being likely in my top 10, but I haven't finished it yet. And it's because it's performance art on TV. And I'm just like, I was thrilled by the first episode, but I've only seen 1. So
I have 2 episodes that were in my top list, or 2 seasons of TV that were my top list that were not in yours, and that is the last season of Atlanta, Donald Glover's TV show Atlanta, which I highly recommend to everybody when you're talking about, 3/4 comedy and then they just get you with that gut punch. That is Atlanta, and that last season in particular, and also season 3 of Rami. Same sort of deal, really, really hilarious, and then will just rip you apart emotionally. And this season of Rami is each season, it just gets a little more mature in its storytelling and emotional payoff. And this season, the end of it is so good. And I highly recommend both shows if you haven't seen them. Rami is on Hulu. So check it out. And Atlanta is FX, but I think you can also watch it on Hulu.
I think so too.
Yeah. Any last words?
This was thrilling. I loved doing this. Thank you.
Yeah, I always enjoy these long dork offs.
It's a dork off.
Yeah. If you're listening to this podcast and you like what you hear, you should follow us wherever you listen to it. Hit that plus sign or that follow button or whatever snazzy thing you got on there. If you can't find us on your preferred podcast app, just let us know. It's easy to get on those kind of things. You can find us on Spotify and Apple and Stitcher and Audible and the Googles and whatever other nonsense words you can find out there in the dictionary. You should check out Curtis's blog, 12life.com, but you should also check out that episode of The Sound he did. We think it's episode 6. It's the one about tight ends. When you search for it, you can
Rock,
find
paper,
it.
scissors.
There you go.
Yeah, The Sound, rock, paper, scissors.
Check it out. It's actually really, really terrific. And Curtis, dare I say, eloquent in it. Yeah.
Eloquent. I like
Eloquent. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, that's all I got. Once again, for Millie, Curtis, Allanah, the rest of the 12s, saying goodbye and go Hawks.
Go Hawks.
Go Hawks.
Go Hawks.